Global perspectives. Real life and real humanity. Since real life is only possible through knowledge, those who have neglected learning and teaching are considered to be dead, even when they are biologically alive. We were created to learn and to communicate what we have learned to others. Real life is lived at the spiritual level. Those whose hearts are alive, those who conquer the past and the future, transcend the restrictions of time. Such people are never overly distressed by past sorrows or overly anxious about the future. Those who are not able to experience full existence in their hearts, those who lead banal, shallow lives, are always gloomy and inclined to hopelessness. They consider the past as a horrifying grave and see the future as a bottomless well. They live in agony, wondering whether they will live or die. All of us are travelers, and the world is a multicolored exhibition and a rich and colorful book. We were sent to study this book, to increase our spiritual knowledge and to uplift others. This colorful and pleasurable journey is a one-time event. For those whose feelings are alert and whose hearts are awake, this journey is more than enough to establish a paradise-like garden. But for those whose eyes are covered, it is as if all goes by in a single breath. The humble and modest are highly regarded by the created and by the Creator. The haughty and self-conceited, those who belittle others and put on haughty airs, are always disliked by the created and are punished by the Creator. Humility is a sign of virtue and maturity, whereas haughtiness and self-conceit indicate an imperfect, low spirit. The most perfect human beings are those who are at ease and intimate in the company of others. In contrast, those who are too proud to join in with others and to form warm relationships are considered to be mere representatives of imperfectness. Humility makes people into true human beings. One sign of humility is that people do not change after they have obtained rank or wealth, learning or fame, or whatever else may be publicly esteemed. If any of these circumstances causes people to alter their ideas, attitudes, and behavior, then they cannot be regarded as having attained true humanity or true humility. When interacting with others, always use as a measure what you find pleasing or displeasing. Wish for others what you wish for yourself, and do not forget that whatever conduct displeases you will also displease others. If you do this, you will be safe from misconduct and bad behavior and will not hurt others. Maturity and perfection of spirit mean that you should be just in your treatment of others, especially those who have done you an injustice. Return their bad action with goodness. Do not cease doing good even to those who have harmed you. Rather, treat them with kindness and nobility, for harming someone is cruel. Repaying evil with evil implies a deficiency in character. The opposite is nobility. There is no limit of goodness that can be done for others. Those who dedicate themselves to doing good for humanity are so altruistic that they can even sacrifice their lives for others. However, such altruism is a great virtue only if it originates in sincerity and purity of intention. It should be far removed from racial or tribal superstitions. Those who regard even the greatest favor they have done for others as being insignificant, yet greatly appreciate even the smallest favor done for themselves, are perfected ones, who have acquired the divine standards of behavior and have found peace in their conscience. Such individuals never remind others of the good that they may have done for them, and never complain when others appear to be indifferent to them. A comparative approach to Islam and democracy. Religion, particularly Islam, has become one of the most difficult subject areas to tackle in recent years. Contemporary culture, whether approached from the perspective of anthropology or theology, psychology or psychoanalysis, evaluates religion with empirical methods. On the one hand, religion is an inwardly experienced and felt phenomenon, one that, for the most part, is related to the permanent aspects of life. On the other hand, believers can see their religion as a philosophy, a set of rational principles, or mere mysticism. The difficulty increases in the case of Islam, for some Muslims and policymakers consider and present it as a purely political, sociological, and economic ideology, rather than as a religion. If we want to analyze religion, democracy, or any other system or philosophy accurately, we should focus on humanity and human life. From this perspective, religion in general and Islam in particular cannot be compared on the same basis with democracy or any other political, social, or economic system. Religion focuses primarily on the immutable aspects of life and existence, whereas political, social, and economic systems or ideologies concern only certain variable social aspects of our worldly life. The aspects of life with which religion is primarily concerned are as valid today as they were at the dawn of humanity, and will continue to be so in the future. Worldly systems change according to circumstances, and so can be evaluated only according to their times. Belief in God, the hereafter, the prophets, the holy books, the angels, and divine destiny have nothing to do with changing times. Likewise, worship and morality's universal and unchanging standards have little to do with time and worldly life. Therefore, when comparing religion or Islam with democracy, we must remember that democracy is a system that is being continually developed and revised. It also varies according to the places and circumstances where it is practiced. On the other hand, religion has established immutable principles related to faith, worship, and morality. Thus, only Islam's worldly aspects should be compared with democracy. The main aim of Islam and its unchangeable dimensions affect its rules governing the changeable aspects of our lives. Islam does not propose a certain unchangeable form of government or attempt to shape it. Instead, Islam establishes fundamental principles that orient a government's general character, leaving it to the people to choose the type and form of government according to time and circumstances. If we approach the matter in this light and compare Islam with the modern liberal democracy of today, we will be better able to understand the position of Islam and democracy with respect to each other. Democratic ideas stem from ancient times. Modern liberal democracy was born in the American 1776 and French revolutions 1789 through 1799. In democratic societies, people govern themselves as opposed to being ruled by someone above. The individual has priority over the community in this type of political system, being free to determine how to live his or her own life. Individualism is not absolute, though. People achieve a better existence by living within a society, and this requires that they adjust and limit their freedom according to the criteria of social life. The Prophet says that all people are as equal as the teeth of a comb. Islam does not discriminate based on race, color, age, nationality, or physical traits. The Prophet declared, "You are all from Adam, and Adam is from earth. O servants of God, be brothers and sisters." Those who were born earlier, who have more wealth or power than others, or who belong to certain families or ethnic groups, have no inherent right to rule others. Islam also upholds the following fundamental principles. Power lies in truth, a repudiation of the common idea that truth relies upon power. Justice and the rule of law are essential. Freedom of belief and rights to life, personal property, reproduction, and health, both mental and physical, cannot be violated. The privacy and immunity of individual life must be maintained. No one can be convicted of a crime without evidence or accused and punished for someone else's crime. An advisory system of administration is essential. All rights are equally important, and the rights of the individual cannot be sacrificed for the sake of society. Islam considers a society to be composed of conscious individuals equipped with free will and having responsibility toward both themselves and others. Islam goes a step further by adding a cosmic dimension. It sees humanity as the motor of history, contrary to the fatalistic approaches of some 19th century Western philosophies of history, such as dialectical materialism and historicism. Just as the will and behavior of every individual determine the outcome of his or her life in this world and in the hereafter, a society's progress or decline is determined by the will, worldview, and lifestyle of its inhabitants. The Quran says, God will not change the state of a people unless they change themselves with respect to their beliefs, worldview, and lifestyle. AHBÂR-I 13:11. In other words, each society holds the reins of its fate in its own hands. The prophetic tradition emphasizes this idea. You will be ruled according to how you are. This is the basic character and spirit of democracy, an idea which does not conflict with any Islamic principle. As Islam holds individuals and societies responsible for their own fate, people must be responsible for governing themselves. The Quran addresses society with such phrases as, O people and O believers. The duties entrusted to modern democratic systems are those that Islam assigns to society and classifies, in order of importance, as absolutely necessary, relatively necessary, and commendable to carry out. The sacred text includes the following passages. Establish all of you peace. Al-Baqarah 2:208. Spend in the way of God and to the needy of the pure and good of what you have earned and of what we bring forth for you from the earth. Al-Baqarah 2:267. If among your women are accused of indecency, you must have 4 witnesses to prove it. An-Nisa 4:15. God commands you to give over the public trusts of the charge of those having the required qualities and to judge with justice when you judge people. An-Nisa 4:58. Observe justice as witnesses respectful for God, even if it is against yourselves, your parents, and relatives. An-Nisa 4:135. If they, your enemies, incline to peace when you are at war, you also incline to it. Al-Anfal 8:61. If a corrupt, sinful one brings you news about others, investigate it so that you should not strike a people without knowing. Al-Hujurat 49:6. If 2 parties among the believers fight between themselves, reconcile them. Al-Hujurat 49:9. In short, the Quran addresses the whole community and assigns it almost all the duties entrusted to modern democratic systems. People cooperate with one another by sharing these duties and establishing the essential foundations necessary to perform them. The government is composed of all these basic elements. Thus, Islam recommends a government based on a social contract. People elect the administrators and establish a council to debate common issues. Also, the society as a whole participates in auditing the administration. During the rule of the first 4 caliphs, 632 to 661, in particular, the fundamental principles of government mentioned above, including free elections, were fully observed. The political system was transformed into a sultanate after the death of Ali, the 4th caliph, due to internal conflicts and the global conditions at the time. Unlike the caliphate, power in the sultanate was passed down through the sultan's family. However, even though free elections were no longer held, societies maintained other principles that are found at the core of liberal democracy of today. Islam is an inclusive religion. It is based on the belief in one God as the creator, Lord, sustainer, and administrator of the universe. Islam is the religion of the whole universe. That is, the entire universe obeys the laws laid down by God. Everything in the universe is Muslim and obeys God by submitting to His laws. Even a person who refuses to believe in God or who follows another religion has to be a Muslim per force as far as bodily existence is concerned. Our entire life, from the embryonic stage to the body's dissolution into dust after death, every tissue of the muscles and every limb of the body follows the course prescribed for each by God's laws. Thus, in Islam, God, nature, and humanity are neither remote from one another nor are they alien to one another. It is God who makes himself known to humanity through nature and humanity itself, and nature and humanity are two books of creation through which each word of God is made known. This leads humankind to look upon everything as belonging to the same Lord, to whom it itself belongs, and therefore regarding nothing in the universe as being alien. His sympathy, love, and service do not remain confined to the people of a particular race, color, or ethnicity. The prophet summed this up with the command, "O servants of God, be brothers and sisters." A separate but equally important point is that Islam recognizes all religions that came before it. It accepts all the prophets and books sent to different peoples in different epochs of history. Not only does it accept them, but it also regards belief in them as an essential principle of being Muslim. In this way, it acknowledges the basic unity of all religions. A Muslim is at the same time a true follower of Abraham, Moses, David, all the other Hebrew prophets, and Jesus. This belief explains why both Christians and Jews enjoyed their religious rights under the rule of Islamic governments throughout history. The Islamic social system seeks to form a virtuous society and thereby gain God's approval. It recognizes right, not force, as the foundation of social life. Hostility is unacceptable. Relationships must be based on belief, love, mutual respect, assistance, and understanding instead of conflict and the pursuit of personal interests. Social education encourages people to pursue lofty ideals and to strive for perfection, not just to run after their own desires. Justified calls for unity and virtues create mutual support and solidarity, and belief secures brotherhood and sisterhood. Encouraging the soul to attain perfection brings happiness in both worlds. Democracy has developed over time. Just as it has gone through many different stages in the past, it will continue to evolve and improve in the future. Along the way, it will be shaped into a more humane and just system, one based on righteousness and reality. If human beings are considered as a whole without disregarding the spiritual dimension of their existence and their spiritual needs, and without forgetting that human life is not limited to this mortal life, and that all people have a great craving for eternity, democracy could reach the peak of perfection and bring even more happiness to humanity. Islamic principles of equality, tolerance, and justice can help it do just this. At the threshold of a new millennium. Just as every dawn, every sunrise, and every coming spring signifies a new beginning and hope, so does every new century and every new millennium. In this respect, within the wheels of time, over which we have no control, humanity has always sought a new spark of life, a breath as fresh as the wind of dawn, and has hoped and desired to step into the light, leaving behind the darkness, as if one were crossing a threshold. We can only speculate as to when the first man and woman appeared on earth. The earth is equated with the heavens as it exhibits the divine creations, and because of the ontological meaning it contains, the value of the earth stems largely from its chief inhabitant, humanity. According to the calendar we use today, we are at the threshold of the third millennium after the birth of Jesus, peace be upon him. However, since time revolves and advances in a helicoidal relativity, there are different measures of time in the world. For example, according to the measure of time that currently enjoys global acceptance, the world is about to cross the threshold of a new 1,000-year period. According to the Jewish calendar, we are already in the second half of the 8th millennium. Within the Hindu time frame, we are living in the Kali Yuga era. If we follow the Muslim calendar, we are approaching the end of the first half of the 2nd millennium. We should remember, however, the fact that each measure of time is nothing more than a relative measurement. While a 100-year period is assumed to be the measure for a century, the idea of a 60-year century, based on the lifespan of an average person, is also worth mentioning. From this point of view, we are already in the 4th millennium after the birth of Jesus, peace be upon him, and the 3rd millennium after the Hijrah, the emigration of the Prophet from Mecca to Medina, the starting point of the Muslim calendar. I bring up this issue because there are people suffering spiritual discomfort engendered by the terrifying auguries believed to be associated with the upcoming millennium, especially in the West. People live in perpetual hope and thus are the children of hope. At the instant they lose their hope, they also lose their fire for life, no matter if their physical existence continues. Having hope is directly proportional to having faith. Just as winter constitutes 1/4 of a year, the periods in the life of a person or a society that correspond to winter are relatively small. The gears of divine acts revolve around such comprehensive wisdom and merciful purposes. These inform us just as the circulation of night and day builds one's hope and revivifies one's spirit, and every new year comes with the expectation of spring and summer, that both in the life of an individual and in the history of a nation, the disastrous periods are short and they are followed by happy times. This cycle of the days of God, which is centered in divine wisdom, is neither fearful nor overly pessimistic for those who have faith, insight, and real perception. Rather, it is a source of continuous reflection, remembrance, and thanksgiving for those having an apprehensive heart, inner perception, and the ability to hear. Just as a day develops in the heart of the night, and as the winter furnishes the womb in which the spring grows, so one's life is purified, matures, and bears its expected fruits within this cycle. Also within this cycle, God-given human abilities become aptitudes and talents. Sciences blossom like roses and weave technology at the workbench of time, and humanity gradually approaches its predestined end. Having stated this general view, which is neither personal nor subjective, but rather an objective fact of human history, it should not be thought that we welcome either winter or the winter-like events corresponding to sorrow, disease, and disaster. Despite the general fact that disease eventually increases the resistance of the body, strengthens the immune system, and drives medical progress, it is pathological and harmful. It is the same with terrestrial and celestial disasters. From a theological and moral point of view, they result from our sins and oppression, which are great enough to shake the earth and the heavens, and from engaging in deeds that have been declared forbidden and despised by law and ethics, whether religious or secular. Even though these diseases awaken people to their mistakes and negligence and provoke developments in geology, architecture, engineering, and related safety measures, even though they elevate the demolished belongings of believers to the level of charity, and the believers themselves to the level of martyrdom, these disasters cause much destruction and harm humanity. In the same way, we read in the Quran, "If God had not hampered some of you with some other of you, the mosques, monasteries, and synagogues in which God is worshipped would have fallen into ruins." Al-Hajj 22:40. In other words, God would be so little known that men and women who are inclined not to recognize anything as superior to themselves, nor to believe that their deeds will be questioned in the hereafter, would have gone completely astray, thereby making earth unsuitable for human life. There is also the divine decree, "You consider something as evil, although it is good for you. You also consider something else as good, although it is bad for you." Al-Baqarah 2:216. For example, war is permissible. Although wars based on specific principles and with the intention of improving the existing situation may have benefits, they should not be mandate as they bring harm. They leave behind ruined houses, destroyed families, and weeping orphans and widows. Moreover, the realities of life cannot be neglected, nor should they be ignored. Human beings are mirrors of the names and attributes of God, and therefore have been distinguished from the rest of creation by being honored with the responsibility for making earth prosperous in His name. If they cannot grasp the wisdom and purposes behind any good or evil that has been sent their way by their Creator, then they cannot escape despair or pessimism. For such people, as can be seen in existentialist literature, life turns into a meaningless process, existence into a purposeless vacuity. nonsense into the only criteria, suicide into a meritorious act, and death becomes the only inevitable reality. The basic nature of humanity. After presenting the issues that constitute the basis of this subject as an introduction, we can switch to our considerations regarding the third millennium. Human history began with two people who constituted the essence of humanity and complemented one another. People lived a tranquil life during this time of the original mother and father and the families that descended from them. They were a united society that had the same views and shared the same environment and lives. From that day on, the essence of humanity has remained unchanged, and it will remain so. The realities surrounding their lives, their physical structure, main characteristics, basic needs, place and time of birth and death, the selection of the parents and their physique, their innate characteristics as well as the surrounding natural environment have not changed. All of these require some essential, vital, invariable realities and values. Thus, the development and alteration of the secondary realities of life should be based on the axis of these primary realities and values, so that life will continue as a worldly paradise under the shadow of heaven. We mentioned above some issues that seem to be harmful or unpleasant. Similarly, there are human traits that seem to be evil at first glance, such as hatred, jealousy, enmity, the desire to dominate others, greed, anger, and egoism. A human being also has other innate drives and needs that allow the continuation of his or her worldly life, such as the need to eat and drink, and the drives of lust and anger. All human drives, needs, and desires should be guided and trained in the direction of the eternal, universal, and invariable values that address the fundamental aspects of humanity. In this respect, the need to eat and drink, and the desires associated with lust and anger can be tamed and transformed into means of absolute or relative good. Likewise, egoism and hatred can become sources of fine attributes and goodness. Jealousy and rivalry can be transformed into competition in charitable and good deeds. The feeling of enmity can be transformed into enmity against Satan, the greatest enemy of humanity, and against the feeling of enmity itself and hatred. Greed and rage can force one to perform good deeds without tiring. Egoism can point out the evil aspects of the carnal soul, or nafs, thereby seeking to train and purify the soul into not excusing its evil actions. All negative feelings can be transformed into sources of good through training and making an effort. This is how one reaches the level of the best of creation, by traveling on the way of transformation from a potential human being to a real and perfected human being, to the best symbol, model, and personal representative of creation and existence. Despite this fact, the realities of human life do not always follow these guidelines. Negative feelings and attributes often defeat people, dominating to such an extent that even the religions that guide people to goodness and kindness are abused, not to mention the feelings and attributes that are sources of absolute good. Human life, at the level of the individual and of humanity as a whole, is merely the summation of internal, personal struggles and their external manifestations. These tides make society, history, and the personal world of the individual an arena of battle, struggle, war, oppression, and tyranny. As a result, it is usually human beings who suffer the consequences. We always reap the harvest of our deeds. In the first period of its history, humanity lived a happy life as a united society, the members of which shared their joys and sorrows. But later on they bound their necks and feet to a rusty yoke composed of the chains of oppression. This was the result of jealousy, greed, and the coveting of the rights and property of others. The consequence was the murder of Abel by Cain. As a result, humanity stepped onto the path of disunity. Despite millennia following one after the other like days, seasons, and years, this cycle still continues. The second millennium. The second millennium started with the Crusades and then the Mongol invasions of the Muslim world, which at the time was the heart of the world and history. Despite the wars and destruction, and despite the crimes committed, sometimes in the name of religion and sometimes in the name of economic, political, and military supremacy, this millennium saw the apex of the civilizations of the East, civilizations based on spirituality, metaphysical, universal, and eternal values, and of the civilizations of the West, those based on physical sciences. Many significant geographical discoveries and scientific inventions occurred during this millennium. Yet, the civilizations of the East and the West existed separately from each other. This separation, which should not have occurred, was based on the fact that the former retired from pursuits of intellect and science, while the latter retired from spirituality, metaphysics, and eternal and invariable values. As a result, the last centuries of the second millennium witnessed disasters that we find hard to comprehend. Due to the growing arrogance and egoism of humanity caused by its accomplishments, people had to experience worldwide colonialism, rampant massacres, revolutions that cost millions of lives, unimaginably bloody and destructive wars, racial discrimination, immense social and economic injustice, and iron curtains built by regimes whose ideology and philosophy sought to deny the essence, freedom, merit, and honor of humanity. It is partly because of this and partly because of some auguries from the Bible that some people in the West fear that the world will again be soaked in floods of blood, pus, and destruction. They are quite pessimistic and worried about how the new millennium will proceed. Our expectations. Modern means of communication and transportation have transformed the world into a large, global village. So, those who expect that any radical changes in a country will be determined by that country alone and remain limited to it are unaware of current realities. This time is a period of interactive relations. Nations and peoples are more in need of and dependent on each other, a situation that causes closeness in mutual relations. This network of relations, which has surpassed the period of brute colonialism and exists on the basis of mutual interest, provides some benefits for the weaker side. Moreover, owing to advances in technology, especially digital electronic technology, the acquisition and exchange of information is gradually growing. As a result, the individual comes to the fore, making it inevitable that democratic governments which respect personal rights will replace oppressive regimes. As every human, unlike animals, represents the whole of humanity, individual rights cannot be sacrificed for society, and social rights should depend on individual rights. This is why the basic human rights and freedoms found in the revealed religions were taken on board by a war-weary West. These rights are given priority in all relations. The primary right is the right to life, which is granted by and can only be taken by God. To accentuate the importance of this right in Islam, a basic Quranic principle is that if one person kills another unjustly, it is the same as if he has killed all of humanity. If one saves another, it is the same as if he has saved all of humanity. Al-Ma'idah 5:32. Other rights are the freedom of religion and belief, thought and expression, to own property and the sanctity of one's home, to marry and have children, to communicate and to travel, and the right to an unimpeded education. The principles of Islamic jurisprudence are based on these and other rights, all of which have now been accepted by modern legal systems, such as the protection of life, religion, property, reproduction, and intellect, as well as the basic understanding of the equality of people, which is based on the fact that all people are human beings, and subsequently, the rejection of all racial, color, and linguistic discriminations. All of these will be and should be indispensable essentials in the new millennium. I believe and hope that the world of the new millennium will be a happier, more just, and more compassionate place, contrary to the fears of some people. Islam, Christianity, and Judaism all stem from the same root, all have essentially the same basic beliefs, and are nourished from the same source. Although they have lived as rival religions for centuries, the common points between them and their shared responsibility to build a happy world for all of the creatures of God make interfaith dialogue among them necessary. This dialogue has now expanded to include the religions of Asia and other areas. The results have been positive. As mentioned above, this dialogue will develop as a necessary process, and the followers of all religions will find ways to become closer and assist each other. Previous generations witnessed a bitter struggle that should never have taken place: science versus religion. This conflict gave rise to atheism and materialism, which influenced Christianity more than other religions. Science cannot contradict religion, for its purpose is to understand nature and humanity, which are each a composition of the manifestations of God's attributes of will and power. Religion has its source in the divine attribute of speech, which was manifested in the course of human history as divine scriptures, such as the Quran, the Gospels, the Torah, and others that have been revealed to just prophets since Adam. Thanks to the efforts of both Christian and Muslim theologians and scientists, it seems that the religion-science conflict that has lasted for a few centuries will come to an end, or at least its absurdity will finally be acknowledged. The end of this conflict and a new style of education that fuses religious and scientific knowledge with morality and spirituality will produce genuinely enlightened people with hearts illuminated by religious sciences and spirituality. Minds illuminated by positive sciences, characterized by all kinds of humane merits and moral values, and cognizant of the socio-economic and political conditions of their time. Our old world will experience an amazing springtime before its demise. This springtime will see the gap between rich and poor narrow. The world's riches will be distributed more justly, according to work, capital, and needs. There will be no discrimination based on race, color, language, or worldview, and basic human rights and freedoms will be protected. Individuals will come to the fore and, learning how to realize their potential, will ascend on the way to becoming the most elevated human on the wings of love, knowledge, and belief. In this new springtime, when scientific and technological progress has been taken into consideration, people will understand that the current level of science and technology resembles the stage of life when an infant is learning how to crawl. Humanity will organize trips into space as if they were merely traveling to another country. Travelers on the way to God, those devotees of love who have no time for hostility, will carry the inspirations within their spirits to other worlds. Yes, this springtime will rise on the foundations of love, compassion, mercy, dialogue, acceptance of others, mutual respect, justice, and rights. It will be a time in which humanity will discover its real essence. Goodness and kindness, righteousness and virtue will form the basic essence of the world. No matter what happens, the world will come to this path sooner or later. Nobody can prevent this. We pray and beg that the infinitely compassionate one will not let our hopes and expectations come to nothing. As a new world is being built. Life and the spirit of hope. If life is viewed through the window of He who has given life, then hope is the dynamic of action that does not fade. It is nourishment for those who do not think continuously of themselves, but rather of others, for those who find true happiness in the happiness of others, and for those who find a life in bettering the lives of others. It is also a source of energy which never diminishes for those who have devoted themselves to a blessed ideal of leading a life at the level of the heart and soul, having freed themselves of prisons of time, space, matter, physicality, and self-interest. In that respect, at a time when all others are of the belief that everything is over, a time when the great figure of a nation has been bent to breaking point, a time when resolve and will, adrift with tremors, storms, and floods, die away, A time when those who have grown to depend on office, degree, wealth and prosperity, and powers that are not derived from the true possessor of strength and power, and those who, due to not being able to find the truth, have bound their hearts to the stars, the moon, and the sun, objects that fade from the sky, begin to face despair. The hope of the people of ideals, these people whom we have described in the beginning lines of this paragraph, takes on such an epic quality that in all circumstances they can challenge the universe. They continue on their way unshaken, even if their calculations and their plans should fail 50,000 times, taking on an attitude of prosperity even in the face of poverty. They become life for dead souls and strength for those bent at the knees. A certain person from the West said, "When all give up hope, even hope of defense, this is when the attack of the Turkish nation begins." The new, fresh shoots that emerge after the Mongol invasion and the division of Anatolia, the regathering of power and the increasing vitality after the defeat at Çubuklu Valley, Gallipoli, and subsequently the Turkish National War, all of which were fought to the point of annihilation and which are epics without equal set down in history. All these give the impression that our nation's essential function in history is to write and rewrite epics of regeneration, built upon the foundations of hope and faith. Today, in gratitude, I am trying to be patient in the face of serious medical problems. I am experiencing the homesickness caused by being far away from my homeland, a place that I love more than life itself, away from the water, the air, the rocks, the soil, the sky, and the rosy-faced people. I miss them all terribly. This homesickness is reflected in my soul as if it were a bottomless well. I watch anxiously, but at the same time, hopefully, what is happening in my land, even though I may only see glimpses or only be able to see what is on the surface. A land that many now consider a place impossible to live in. I am trying to see what direction the latest attempts of America will take, and still I am keeping my hope alive for the world and humanity, fresh as evergreen leaves, and I keep on looking upon tomorrow with a smile. Humanity is the source of everything. Humanity, with all of its attributes, is a creation that is difficult to understand. As with all realms, the essence of all created things is present in humans, and, in a way, with their characteristics. In one respect, it is possible to understand existence by knowing humanity, while, in another respect, knowing humanity is possible by understanding existence. In truth, understanding humanity is the principal mission of humanity, since humanity is also the window that opens on understanding the Creator. For this reason, the first and foremost duty of human beings is to discover and know themselves and then to turn their gaze toward their Lord with the lens of their enlightened nature. It is an unfortunate fact that this is what most of us neglect to do. Indeed, how many people can we name who exercise self-criticism often enough? How many people can we name who every day rediscover themselves anew, a rediscovery of their weaknesses, their abilities, their absences, their sources of strength, along with the things that they have gained or lost? How many people can stroll through their own inner selves? How many people can we name who try to examine their own beings, not with a passing awe or a casual curiosity, and not by looking deep into faults and degrading themselves, but like a fair, professional, and rational doctor, sitting themselves on a stool to be examined, desiring to investigate and to become acquainted with their true selves, trying to study themselves realistically in order to diagnose the disease? It is simply because this deed has not been performed that humanity cannot find the happiness it desperately seeks in this lost paradise. More precisely, humanity cannot find the lost paradise. The patent right of a small minority. It is impossible not to appreciate the results of scientific research, the wonders of civilization, the products of technology. But have we succeeded in employing this science and technology, the product of all this effort and intellectual labor, and the speed and globalization that they bring, in the service of more exalted purposes? Do space, which is being compressed more and more each day until it is no larger than a village, and time, which people are attempting to shrink to zero, serve a goal beyond themselves? Or do they, despite the greater majority, serve the worldly prosperity of a small minority who hold the patent of all these? Reaching the furthest corners of the universe, investigating every existing thing, becoming as familiar with the world as we are with our village or district, discovering information about even the most hidden aspects of things. If all this is placed above human needs and desires, if respect for human privacy and values is uprooted and let adrift, then the time has come to consider whether it is preferable to live in a world with all these modern products, or whether it is better to live without them, in a world of bygone ages when human beings were happier and when personal and social life and relationships were founded on human values. Up until now, science, technology, and speed have never been the principal needs of humanity. But it would be incorrect to oppose science and technology with idealistic thoughts. Such an opposition is only a form of utopia. No good for humanity can come from ranting at machinery or cursing the factories. The machines will continue to operate. The factory will continue to exude its fumes, even if we heap curses upon it. For this reason, it may be said that what is important here is not this or that technology, but rather who controls science and technology and what purpose they serve. Science and technology can turn the world into a hell in the hands of an irresponsible minority. If the same tools are in the hands of angels, no one will suffer. Humanity has suffered most from those who see right as belonging to those who have power and insatiable ambition. Science and technology and the speed with which they allow us to perform are sacred and worthy of respect only in proportion with how much they direct humans toward humane goals, facilitate the accomplishment of these goals, bring about peace and happiness, extinguish longing and the pain of separation, deal with a multitude of ills before time runs out, serve the general harmony of the world, provide balance between states, participate in the resolution of worldly and spiritual problems, and give momentum to research and establishing facts that will enhance our understanding. But when science and technology are distanced from the goals mentioned, and when they become values in and of themselves, when it is expected that they will only serve themselves or only the interests of a small minority, it is then that their absence is much better than their presence. Technology and science in the service of humanity. I believe that both science and technology should be viewed from this very perspective. We have to ask in whose service science and technology are today. Do they serve the relationship between individuals, between the individual and society, between society and the state? Do they serve mutual love, respect, and support for one another in all good things, tolerance, the acceptance of everyone in their own context, truth, loyalty, a respect of rights? Or do they serve mendacity, deceit, malicious conjecture, slander, and an unnatural interest in other people's sins and faults, a violation of privacy and intrusion into the lives of others? Do they serve respect from the heart of the rights of all, something that should be protected, for example, the right to belief, life, personal possessions, reproduction, and mental and physical health? Do they serve good intentions, mutual understanding? Do they serve in the relationships between states and nations? Do they serve what is right, what is just? Do they encourage sharing, abstinence from exploitation, respect for basic human rights and freedoms, or do they serve the sovereignty of capital and crude force? If science and technology emphasize the negative elements stated above, this, then, is a nightmare scenario for the future. Indeed, if the values which are universally valid today and upon which globalization is founded are the negative ones enumerated above, then the fact that at the present time half the world is living on $2 a day, with 1 billion people surviving on even less, the fact that 1/4 of the world does not have access to healthy drinking water, that the most terrible of diseases, like AIDS, have a tendency to spread rapidly and thus threaten humanity, the fact that health, which is the most vital need of humanity, has become an industry with very expensive services, the fact that global warming and pollution is rife, the fact that a major proportion of the world's population is living without any democratic rights, the fact that human rights violations have become the norm, that living conditions in many places of the world are abysmal, and that unpreventable acts of local and international terrorism reign, will be the fearful reality for the whole of humanity. A Muslim cannot be a terrorist. I should point out first that the religion that God has sent, whether it be called Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, cannot be thought of as allowing terrorism, let alone prescribing it. First of all, in God's regard, life is of paramount importance. All existence has been programmed to give way to life. Life is the name of a divine mystery, which lets one thing retain all things. A thing with no life is an orphan, even though it may be as large as a mountain, and its relationship with what surrounds it is only limited to the place that it inhabits. On the other hand, something that has life, even though it may be as simple as a honeybee, can call the whole universe my garden, and can look upon all flowers as friends. That bee has many connections and dealings with all different kinds of existence, from the sun to the air, from the air to humans. Thus, life is the point of concentration for the names of the excellent Just One, a focal point for the simultaneous manifestation of all these attributes. God, having given such importance to life, has deemed it to be one of the 5 essential values to be protected with the religion that He has sent. Islam has deemed the killing of any single individual to be equal to the killing of the whole of humanity, as one life represents the life of all. Therefore, saving the life of a single individual is the same as saving the life of all. Moreover, as far as rights are concerned, it is said, "There are no minor or major rights." Namely, it is seen that the right of the individual and the right of society are equal. One cannot be sacrificed for the other, to the extent that it has been decreed, if a ship is carrying 9 murderers and 1 innocent soul, that ship cannot be sunk to punish the 9 murderers. Terror cannot be a means for an Islamic goal. Secondly, just as Islam prescribes that the goal has to be lawful in all acts of Muslim individuals, so too has it particularly emphasized that the means employed to attain that goal must also be lawful, reminding those who try to reach a lawful goal through unlawful means that they will in the end come face to face with a diametric opposite of that which they were aiming for. In this respect, we can say that terror cannot be a means to realize any Islamic goal. Moreover, Islam has never looked favorably upon war, although it is a reality and one of the most prominent elements in the history of humankind. Islam has bound war first and foremost to the condition of defense, and then, within the framework of the principle, inciting dissent is worse than murder, found in the Quran. It has deemed war lawful only to prevent war and disputes which lead to war, to prevent disorder, oppression, and subjection. These are the conditions that Islam deems necessary for engaging in war. For the first time in human history, Islam introduced serious limitations and principles concerning the matter. Orders like the following have gone down in history. Do not let the fear of God go from your hearts. Do not forget that you can do nothing without the help of God. Always remember that Islam is the religion of peace and love. The courage, the bravery of the God's messenger, and his keeping to the path that God has ordained should always be a model for you. Do not trespass cultivated land and orchards. Respect the priests and monks who live in temples and those who have given themselves to God. Do not hurt them. Do not kill civilians. Do not act in an untoward manner toward women. And do not injure the feelings of the defeated. Do not accept gifts from the local population. Do not attempt to house your soldiers in the houses of the locals. Do not neglect to perform your prayer 5 times a day. Fear God, and do not forget that death can find you at any time, even thousands of miles away from the field of battle. So, be ready for death at all times. These orders are the principles that heads of state have reminded their commanders of throughout Islamic history, and they have been followed to the letter. War, which can only be applied by a state and only perforce within the framework of certain principles, cannot be declared by individuals and organizations. Moreover, it is clear that acts of terror, which are without restraint, which target human values that must be protected, and which destroy safety, have no place in Islam. In that respect, just as a terrorist cannot be a genuine Muslim cannot be a terrorist. A Muslim cannot be a terrorist because Islam decrees the severest of worldly punishments on those who target people's lives and security. In the hereafter, those who deny God and who assign Him partners, along with those who kill people and deliberately take lives, are faced with eternal hell. A person cannot possibly commit an act that is understood to have such a punishment whilst being a Muslim and displaying the characteristics of faith and Islam. Thus, it is not possible for a terrorist to be a true Muslim, just as it is impossible for a Muslim to be a terrorist. The problems of Islamic societies. Moreover, if acts of terror continue to take place in this way, be it in Islamic societies or elsewhere, there must first be a sound diagnosis of the situation, and then whatever treatment the diagnosis calls for must be given. As far as this is concerned, the following can be listed as the principal reasons why certain individuals in the Islamic world become entangled or are made to become entangled in this web of terrorism, and the reasons why terror is a serious problem in the world. A. Islamic societies entered the 20th century as a world of the oppressed, the wronged, and the colonized. The first half of the century was occupied with wars of liberation and independence, wars that were carried over from the 19th century. In all these wars, Islam assumed the role of an important factor uniting people and spurring them to action. As these wars were waged against what were seen as invaders, Islam, national independence, and liberation came to mean the same thing. Afterwards, when national states were established in these parts of the world, the states were not compatible with their public, whereas the states should have instructed the public in Islam with its true identity and nature. They acted in a way which disregarded the public, a way contrary to the values and traditions of the public. This made Islam a pillar, a refuge against the administration in the eyes of the public. Consequently, it is regrettable to say, Islam has come to be regarded as a traditional political ideology by many. B. In many regions of Islamic geography, administrations that disregard and denigrate the public, and which are oligarchic in nature, have worked for the well-being of the dynasties, the families of which they are members, rather than working for the prosperity of their country and trying to establish the unity of public and the state. And thus these administrations have been degraded to the position of mere oppressors and are deserving of loathing in the eyes of the public. The poor and uneducated masses in the public have become the enemies of their own administrations. C. Both in Islamic societies and other nations, the roots of terror have always grown in poverty, ignorance, and lack of education. In many places, feudal and tribal systems still continue, and in these places, a great majority of the population regard the developed countries of the West, countries which at one time had invaded and occupied their country, as the protectors and supporters of the administrators ruling over them, and thus they hold these Western countries fully responsible for the wrongs and oppression that they suffer in their own country. D. Values like democracy, basic human rights, the spread of knowledge and education across society, economic prosperity, equality in production, the institutionalization of consumption and income in a way that prevents class formation, the supremacy of law and justice, values which today are generally accepted throughout the world, have never been fully realized in Islamic societies, nor in other regions designated as third world countries. Doubtless, those who are primarily responsible for this situation are the administrators of these countries and their supporters, the developed Western countries that have helped them stay in power. Thus, even though these countries may assume the championship of the said values, as far as the people of the Third World are concerned, they have not been seen as being sincere and are seen as those who are exploiting these values. E. Today's world has, as we have briefly touched on, shrunk to the size of a large village as a result of great developments in information transfer and travel. All people and countries are now neighbors. A few neighbors, a minority, are luxuriating in an ocean of abundance, whereas the greater majority is poor, extremely poor. Colonialism or exploitation, which is exercised very subtly and covertly, is considered to be one of the most significant reasons for this poverty, and moreover, the greater majority is destitute to such a degree that it is unable to meet its most basic needs. All of these factors have led to feelings of rancor, resentment, and enmity. Moreover, it is an unfortunate reality today that unlawful acts have become as much a norm as lawful acts. Corruption, deceit, the desire for easy money, selfishness, individualism, international gambling, and international smuggling, principally of drugs and arms, can be found in nearly every country in the world today. The mafia organizations that make such activities possible and other similar organizations, like large holdings, trusts, and cartels, are all in deadly competition, employing bloody murderers and thugs who represent crude physical force. The fact that these organizations feed and support such activities, no doubt, is another important and undeniable factor in terrorism taking on an international aspect. F. Maybe more importantly than all of the above, the fact that religion and the religious values, spirituality, and ethics that are connected to religion have been eroded away throughout the world constitutes the most important source of both terrorism and other major social problems that threaten humanity today. The world is going through a spiritual crisis. All the essential supporting pillars of humanity have collapsed and have been destroyed. Philosophies of depression, Satanism, currents that are fundamentally materialist and naturalist, but which appear spiritual, a new one crops up every day, and so-called cults all prepare the ground for violence and suicide. Indeed, these phenomena are like an epileptic attack, shaking our world, or the shivering of one with a high fever. To ask why people commit suicide, kill and use drugs when these people have lost their hope, when they see the past as a vast tomb and the future as a bottomless chasm, finding life meaningless can only be put down to blind ignorance, if not an artful pretension of ignorance. G. The final word that needs to be said upon the matter is the following. The fact that there has been no definition or categorization of terrorism recognized by all nations, or at least set down by the United Nations to date, is a serious problem. What acts should be considered within the term terror acts, and what acts should not? Who is a terrorist and who is not? Everybody seems to arrive at their own answers to these questions. One person's terrorist is another's freedom fighter. One person's warrior for ideals can be considered as a terrorist by someone else. If there is to be a war against terror in the international arena, and there most definitely should be a serious campaign, it appears that there first has to be a definition of terrorism that is accepted at least by the United Nations. If this can be achieved, an international campaign against terror can gain a lawful status, a status that everyone will accept, a state of affairs where no one will be able to lay blame on anyone else, and maybe this will constitute a first step in the prevention of terrorism. It is hardly necessary to speak of the resolutions, after we have spoken of the essential problems and the issues that are mentioned as their causes. The diagnosis of the problem contains the resolution within itself. The principal fabric of social life. The principal fabric of social life is founded upon religion, law, wisdom, and power. A person or society without religion will not be able to continue for long, just as they will not be of benefit to others. In truth, religion is an essential element that has been determined beyond ourselves and that has entered our lives, whether we accept it or not. Even though we may be the most perfect creatures, exalted with our free will, there are still many indispensable elements that surround our lives and to which we are bound. For instance, where we are born, when we are born, and when and where we leave this world are all planned and determined extraneous to us. Similarly, we have no say in the determination of our family, of our mother and father, of our race, color, or physical characteristics. Moreover, even our body works totally independent of our will. We cannot help getting hungry, thirsty, or sleepy. Also, the ways and means through which we fulfill these needs are independent of ourselves as well. In our simplest daily activities, such as eating and drinking, our only role is procuring the food and drink and making the decision to do so. In a way, we can say that our role in the act of fulfilling our needs amounts to no more than 1%. This means that whether we like it or not, our actions are limited by certain dominant conditions. Religion, too, is one of these forceful conditions. Whether or not we accept it, religion is one of the most essential elements in our lives, an element that cannot be replaced by any other thing. This is because it plays a vital role in the organization and regulation of our spiritual needs which have a greater meaning and importance to us than material needs. Religion has an importance not only in and of itself, but also in the organization of our individual, domestic, and social life, as well as in our material life. Religion plays a crucial role in determining and enacting the laws that are the regulating principles in certain aspects of our lives. The final goal is not laws or their application. These gain value only to the degree in which they serve humanity and society. Thus, when setting down laws, one has to be well acquainted with humanity and with all its characteristics, taking its essential nature into consideration. One also has to know society, which is made up of people with awareness and will, the needs and means through which society satisfy these needs, and one also must know the sorts of relationships that exist between the individuals within society. Individuals are like the atoms of a whole, and therefore one must also be aware of the connections and bonds individuals have with the collective spirit of society. Thus, in being familiar with society and with the people of which it is composed, religion performs a special function, since both the creator of humanity and the one who preaches religion is God. In that respect, the role of religion in understanding humans and society is so critical that it is impossible to estimate its importance. The indispensability of religion in the order of society. Secondly, just as force has an undeniable role in law enforcement, the importance of religion in this arena is also undeniably great. Religion is based upon a foundation of putting faith in the existence of a being that sees humans, controls them, and knows not only all that they do, but also all that they think and all of their intentions and aims. And this faith is natural to humanity and always lies dormant in the conscience of humanity, making itself felt at all times. Also, religion, because it may be possible to escape the law, government, and enforcement on this earth, yet it is impossible to be exempt from the boundaries of the divine scrutiny of God, teaches humans that they are responsible for all that they do in this world, and that they will be judged in another world concerning their deeds, and that according to the outcome of that judgment, they will either be bestowed eternal happiness or punished. In truth, in educating humans to become poems of virtues rather than of evil, it is inconceivable that any other worldly system could replace this belief system. Thirdly, the ethical principles of religion in particular have a priority that is irreplaceable by any other worldly thing in the cultivation of humanity. In fact, these ethical canons are the criteria that all people have accepted throughout time. This is an undeniable fact. These criteria defy both existence and time. Whether these evoke the necessary impact on people depends again on the state of religious belief and its application in society. Religion in the Western world today. Some people might be tempted to say that religion has no place in the life of society in developed countries, such as America and those of Western Europe. We must immediately point out that such a statement is in no way correct and that these countries have and are attached to their religions. Just as we have expressed earlier, although religious values may have been weakened over the last 2 centuries throughout the world, humanity today is again searching for religion and is once again inclining toward it. Even though the population may be indifferent to religion to a certain extent in Western Europe, those in the administration seem to be, on the whole, rather religious. Among these, there have always been religious people at the highest levels of administration, and there still are today. Moreover, though secularism is the rule in all these countries, there has never been a mentality dictating that the guidance of religion should be abandoned in social or even in the political life of a country. Western historians state that Christianity is the most important element in the formation of the modern social structure of Europe. According to these historians, Christianity has played a role that extends into the political and social arena, and it has always played a decisive role in particular areas, with significant laws made concerning blasphemy, religious holidays, and collective worship. Also, in countries like the USA and Canada, the majority of the population is attached to their religion, despite what might be said to the contrary, and religiosity is received with serious esteem both within the public and at various levels of the government. When we look at the current body of law in these countries, it is possible to see the influence of religion. For instance, in the USA, the penalties for crimes such as causing the death of a human being can at times exceed the amount of indemnity prescribed by Islam. Secondly, all nations have characteristics unto themselves, stemming from their own nature, history, and culture. Turks have been Muslim for centuries, and it is impossible to sever them from Islam. At times when they have distanced themselves from Islam, they have never found peace or progress. Rather, on the contrary, this way has led to degeneration. This is due to the fact that Islam is unlike any other religion. A Jew does not have to believe in Jesus, nor in the Bible, nor Muhammad and the Quran. A Jew is considered faithful if they do not believe in those things. A Christian, similarly, is considered to be religious even though they do not believe in Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, or the Quran. This is because these religions do not accept the divine systems and books that have followed into their framework. Thus, religion can find a place within the vast spectrum of divine religions that stems from Judaism and Christianity. In this spectrum there is a book, a prophet with which it is connected, and thus the system can never become completely corrupted. When someone has put it down, it may sour like milk, but in the same way, this soured product can still serve a purpose. If we use another metaphor, religion can take refuge in one of the many rooms of a palace and be illuminated with the light found in that room. Islam, on the other hand, encompasses all religions. Believing in Muhammad and the Quran as the last and the essential, and thus believing in all the prophets and holy books, is one of the pillars of Islam. In other words, Islam is inclusive, uniting everything. If we take up the palace metaphor again, Islam is the electrical system, the main generator for the whole building. If you abandon that system, the whole palace, the whole world will be plunged into darkness. There is no more light that illuminates. Those who abandon this light are the anarchists who deny all order. In these last 3 centuries, centuries which have been years of subjection for Muslims, and even at the present time, when the face of Islam has been darkened by those who claim to be the most genuine members, at a time when Islam is presented as being dark by its enemies, the number of people turning to Islam continues to grow at a remarkable pace, while the number of people who estrange themselves from Islam is still very low. This may give some idea about what we have been discussing. Thus, those who want order in Turkey and in the world should conform to Islam and embrace it, not abandoning it to the mercy of those who misinterpret and misapply it. In the fabric of a healthy society, the law should give itself up to wisdom, that is to say, it should not go against the essential nature of humanity and the structure of nature, in short, the laws of creation. Law should take into account the character of the nation and national religious values. It should heed the warnings of logic and common sense. It should be readily acceptable by the majority. Along with religion, history, traditions, and national values, the main principles of sociology, anthropology, and even physics and chemistry are vitally important in the determination and institutionalization of laws. Law is not an independent science. It is a science that encompasses religion, history, philosophy, sociology, the sociology of history, psychology, anthropology, physics, chemistry, etc., and it has to be viewed in this light. Otherwise, the regulations made will be like a dress that does not fit. It will need frequent alterations. The material is of poor quality. The pattern is unflattering. It is of the wrong size. This outfit must be cut up and sewn again, taken in here, let out there. Such a garment will bring about more harm than good to the composition of society. Force cannot be an end in itself. Another great element in the fabric of society is force. Undoubtedly, there is a divine reason for the existence of force as well. Just as without force it would be impossible to enforce the law, it would also be impossible to protect the safety of the country, especially vis-à-vis foreign powers. Also, force has a particular place in ensuring law and order domestically, and thus it must be respected. But force is not a value or an end in itself. It can and should not be the final objective. Force is worthy of respect only as long as it serves people's rights and justice. Force that has gone out of control in the hands of a minority defeated by their own ambitions and selfishness will not revere rights or justice. It will authorize no law, no wisdom. The fact that rights should be sacrificed to force, that considerations of self-interest should rise to the surface above all other values, that bitter racism should replace universal values, that attempts to solve national and international problems should be made with crude force has always been a problem for humanity. In a situation where problems are attempted to be solved through crude force, it is impossible to speak of intellect, judgment, rights, justice, or law. On the contrary, in their stead are unlawfulness, injustice, and oppression. Even though force may be considered a potential power for the removal of problems, in the hands of the just and through the guidance of logic and judgment, it has always been an instrument of destruction in the hands of the cruelty that springs up in the axis of emotions. It is the wilderness of force that acts with the supposition of an unlimited freedom that does not secure rights, justice, law, intellect, or judgment their due value. It is this fatal error that made Alexander dizzy and clouded his gaze. It is this that damaged the genius of Napoleon. It is this that transformed Hitler into the crazy man of the century. So, it would not be an exaggeration to say that unbridled force is behind the chain of chaos and the countercurrents that we are experiencing today. It appears that this chaos will continue until the day that those who represent force in the world submit themselves to justice, and the masses following these people be rid of the popular currents of everyday life, and look at the world through the prism of justice. The war policy of USA. The questions that we have tried to address up until this time in the framework of basic principles and general rules have been expressed clearly enough not to require individual explanations or deeper analysis. Still, if we have to say specific things about recent events, the following can be said. To reiterate a sociological truth, a truth which has been misconstrued by some, that I have expressed many times before, there has always been a power that kept the balance in the world, and there always will be. This power was once Rome. Then for a time it was Islam, first with the Arabs and then through the Muslim Turks, that assumed this function. Starting with the 19th century, the Anglo-Saxon world has taken hold of the position of balancing the world. First it was the British Empire that did this, followed by, after World War II, America. God states in the Holy Quran that He gives property to whomever He wishes, and also that He takes it away from whomever He wishes. He makes whomever he wishes respected or degraded, and similarly, he states that he circulates victories, defeats, sovereignty, and subjection among the nations. That is to say, time does not follow a straight course, but rather a circular orbit. Just as the Earth orbits around the Sun or the solar system gyrates toward a destination, so does time and history approach a relative end. All this is determined by God, true, but still the will of humanity, the performance that it makes with its will and its behavior, can also have an effect to a certain degree. Looking at what is happening in the universe, we discover the executive acts of the one that has created and the one that administers existence, and we call these laws. Just as some laws of God are manifested as religion, he also has laws that pertain to his executive acts in the life of humanity and the universe. Just as the fact of whether or not obeying religion or its decrees, which we may call the laws of religion, has results, rewards, and punishments, which will be manifested partly in this world, but principally in the hereafter, so too obeying or ignoring the laws of sciences like physics, chemistry, biology, and astronomy have results, rewards, and punishment, most of which come forth in this world, and some in the hereafter. For instance, among the laws concerning life on earth are attaining a goal, in most cases as a result of patient perseverance, or getting mired down in the road due to impatience. Wealth is the result of hard work, poverty the result of laziness, success is the result of systematic and methodical study, and failure the result of non-systematic and unmethodical study. God treats people, societies, nations, and states in relation to whether they obey laws of this kind, and accordingly states and nations take their place vis-à-vis the balance of the world. Today, the USA engages the dominant position in the political balance of the world. However, its dominance depends on whether it continues to act on the basis of human rights and justice. It appears that at the moment the machinery of the system works well in America. But just as each day embraces its night, and each spring and summer reaches winter, if this system leads to a blindness of system, if America starts to present disloyalty to values such as democracy, human rights, and the fundamental freedoms which it claims to champion, if it does not wield the domination that fate has placed in its hands on the principles of justice and the protection of human rights, then its day too will turn to night, its summer will turn into winter. Just as has been stated above, no system can live long if it is supported solely by force. Force that does not depend on rights and justice will inescapably diverge toward oppression and thus prepare its own end. Today, the world is being shaken by great problems which have been partly looked at above. In addition to this, countries like China and India, which are in possession of ancient civilizations and large populations, are today in a state of awakening. In Eastern Europe, Russia is another great power. Europe is on the path to becoming a unified state, though it is still uncertain how successful and long-lived this effort will be. Moreover, the countries of Asia and Africa, which see themselves as having been oppressed for centuries, possess a potential that must be taken into consideration. To install a system dependent on force in such a world and to procure such a system's longevity is not a simple task. I sincerely hope that America will not make a regrettable mistake that will undo the existing balance, unleashing events that would turn the world into rivers of blood. Regimes of oppression. Not any longer. The fact that the world has in some aspects shrunk to the size of a village due to rapidly growing communication technologies presents a situation where regimes of oppression, like sovereignty through force, do not have much chance to continue unchecked. The human being is a noble creature. It cannot bear to be a slave or servant for long. For their own good, it is vital for all states and for the people who operate the administrations to establish a governmental system that serves people and acts according to the principle of the master is the one who is being served. Each individual person has innate honor, self-esteem, and character befitting to a human being. As long as the honor, self-esteem, and character that the Creator bestowed upon a person are not taken into consideration, it is impossible to instate peace and safety in any country or in the world. Believing, living in the way one believes, thinking in liberal ways, expressing what one thinks, and the freedom of communication and travel are all the basic rights of human beings. In a society that cannot procure and guarantee the most basic rights, like the right to life, security, health, employment and earning, and the establishment of a family, in a society where the sharing and consumption of production and basic values that keep the society alive, like rights, justice, and balance, are not protected, in such a society, virtues like love, mutual respect, and cooperation cannot be cultivated. It is impossible for any sovereignty to be long-lived in a world that is poor in these aspects. In fact, any administration or sovereignty that lacks these vital characteristics will always feel insecure and suffer profound uneasiness. Even though the consideration of the world as a village becomes firmer and more prevalent over the course of time, different beliefs, races, customs, and traditions will continue to cohabit in this village. Each individual is like a unique realm unto themselves. Therefore, the desire for all humanity to be similar to one another is nothing more than wishing for the impossible. For this reason, the peace of this global village lies in respecting all these differences, considering these differences to be part of our nature, and in ensuring that people appreciate these differences. Otherwise, it is unavoidable that the world will devour itself in a web of conflicts, disputes, fights, and the bloodiest of wars, thus preparing the way for its own end. New World Order. Everyone takes up the matter of a new world order and evaluates it from a different point of view, according to their own thoughts. This is quite natural. For example, people who have suffered from an internationalism disagreeable for many might accept chauvinism as a form of salvation and be inclined toward it. As a matter of fact, in Asia today, almost every nation, under the ideal of turning back toward its ancient history, is turning toward its own particular values to such a degree that these nations now see themselves as being nationalistic. In view of the present situation, it is possible to evaluate the changes in the Russias, the Uzbeks, the Kazakhs, and others in this way. Today, there are a number of changes with similar significance taking place in other countries in the world. As long as these changes and developments do not harm anyone else, they can be seen as being normal. However, if we can find a way and a method that would make these changes more beneficial, it would then be possible to prevent further tragedies. Some of these developments follow a course based on religion. In relation to these, it is possible to mention both organized and unorganized activities throughout various parts of the world. Unlike others, they approach every matter of the principle that religion is basic. And naturally, they want to evaluate today's unsettled situation in line with their own way of thinking and manipulate and lead people to the position required by religion. In addition to this is the fact that the attempt by the powers which have exploited the world many times to take advantage of this period of restructuring seems normal from their own perspectives. Is there full agreement among these powers? Of course not. However, it is widely believed that they are trying to come together and to reach an agreement as soon as possible. As is known, Britain does not think very differently on this matter from America. Although they had a small difference of opinion regarding the Sarajevo issue, the British are now also following America's line. Sometimes France appears to have different views, but that derives more from their effort to get a share in the new structure and formation rather than a genuine difference in view. In addition, there are some countries in which it is difficult to tell whether they are comfortable with the new order or not. It is quite difficult to understand the situation of these countries, just as there are some diseases that are hard to diagnose. As a matter of fact, they do not expect a share in the general advantages. In fact, it is not obvious what they really want at the present time. It is also necessary to take note of the internal change that every country expects from itself. Of course, the manifestation of this expectation will vary according to the country, and it is impossible to consider and analyze all of them separately. If you like, let us make a few points about expectations in our own country and then move on. Our society is prudent and vigilant. One day it will assuredly listen to its intuition and conscience, and, adopting the change most suitable to its nature, it will realize this change. This situation being surmised, many differences in thought have emerged in our country. Hopefully, those who possess all these different views and thoughts are sincere in what they say and want to do. In this broad spectrum, some differences in line and motif are quite normal, and in fact, in one respect, they should be accepted as being beneficial. After these general remarks, we can briefly consider the matter within a technical perspective. The idealized peaceful world cannot be established by war and spilling blood, nor will camouflaging activities of aggression and occupation yield positive results. For this reason, it is beneficial to repeat clearly and precisely once again that any balance of power that is made by using force will collapse in the shortest period of time, and those who were responsible for it will be the first to be buried under the debris. I think we have witnessed that, in this sense, Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf, and Somalia are some of the most striking examples. Examples of reaction are likely to be even more violent in the future. The sympathy among Muslim peoples in the Muslim world, a sympathy which was once felt for the leaders of the free world, will slowly melt, and antipathy will take its place. It appears that if the new world order is founded upon explicit or implicit exploitation by force, instead of democracy and full enjoyment of basic human rights and freedoms, then this antipathy will continue in expanding dimensions. Our ancestors said, "The water jug breaks on the way to the well." Those who have gained a position by destroying something will themselves collapse and lose that position later on, in the same way. If we look all around us today and take into consideration the recurrence of history, we will be able to see more clearly what is awaiting us tomorrow. Even if the world is not in a process of renewal, and it is clear today that it is not, it definitely is in a process of reconstruction. When the correct time arrives, this reconstruction will certainly be realized. When this happens, instead of having a world that has been shaped with malice and hatred, a surprising world that has taken its form in a climate of love, tolerance, and forbearance will appear before us. The collective conscience will gladly welcome and place it in its heart, not neglecting those who have a share in its reformation. These people will leave permanent tracks, and, even if they have physically left this world, their tracks will remain for centuries. I believe with my whole heart that the only thing to do today in order to realize these spring-fragranced dreams is to perform this kind of service for humanity. For this reason, instead of temporary, fleeting, and unpromising efforts, I would advise a type of movement that is lasting and fully beneficial in every way. I think that as long as I am alive, I will not hesitate to repeat these recommendations. Regarding the information age and the clash of civilizations. As in the past, there are some conjectures being made about the future today as well. One of these is the claim regarding the future as an age of information. Those people who are discussing the future in this way are basically futurists. There are many who see the people who are making these kinds of conjectures as oracles of the second millennium. Yet, rather than being objective evaluations, some of the claims that are made related to the future in terms of historical cycles are efforts to develop ideas around some particular desires, and therefore they carry no more value than any other predictions. In other words, I think that as a result of these claims, people form expectations in the same way that they expect an answer to a prayer. Thus, while saying that the expectation produced by these types of claims that the future will be like this gives birth to certain efforts in that direction, these expectations eventually become goals and purposes. Once the goal has been determined, different strategies and policies will be produced to reach that goal, and efforts will be made to fulfill it. I think this is the crux of the matter. Along with this, there has been an extension of the prophetic mission of God's messenger up until the modern day through the line of representatives, through people like Muhyiddin ibn al-Arabi, Imam al-Ghazali, Imam Rabbani, Mevlana Khalid, and Bediüzzaman. We hope that the function of this fortunate line of transmission is to prepare a foundation for rebirth of the prophetic spirit in the years to come, and in this respect, we hope that this spirit will live again. Of course, the prophet will not be there, but Islam, in the pure understanding of the companions, will be ever ready to greet life once again. But apart from all this, as we live in a world where casuality and certain other laws are operative, if we act without taking such laws into consideration, we are in danger of falling into determinism. However, Muslims, by using their will, are able to consider the causes carefully enough so that someone looking from the outside would think that they are acting only according to the laws of causality. On the other hand, regarding results obtained from actions, Muslims should be so completely submitted to and trusting in God's will that someone looking from the outside would think that they have completely rejected causes. Acting in this way shows that, on the one hand, causes are very important and everything humanity does should definitely be planned around them and put into effect accordingly. On the other hand, while so doing, due to their fear of falling into the error of speculating partners to God Almighty, they should also know that they have not personally achieved any success themselves. Rather, all success is directly from God. After determining the matter in this way, we can summarize our thoughts regarding the future in the following way. In the future, everything will be within the orbit of knowledge, and the horizons that have been darkened by our neglect for a period will once more be enlightened. To a large extent, we have been particularly neglectful of the scientific knowledge obtained during the 4th and 5th centuries, after the Hijrah, that is based on the Quran, and we have turned our backs on the very important dynamics that could keep us on our feet. Personally, I have always been saddened that the madrasas got rid of Sufism, of what can be called Islam's spiritual life. Later, their decrease in interest in the experimental sciences and the eventual expulsion of the same contributed to our falling far behind the newly scientifically developing countries. So the neglect we showed in the past should be made up for, and our tomorrows will be built on knowledge, and everything will take its strength and power from knowledge. Knowledge will occupy a very important place in a world that is rapidly becoming smaller and in an era when time and space are shrinking. The important point here is whether or not we will be ready for such a world. Today, there are many scientists in the world, in many different countries, but, in my humble opinion, they are not enough to establish a new, happy world, even if they were to work all together. For this reason, there is a need for a new way of thinking today, a new approach to the sciences, a new life philosophy, and new educational institutions. New generations should be mobilized at every period of their lives, from kindergarten to high school, and from there on to university. Since everything will obtain power from knowledge in the future, it will only be possible to build knowledge for the future with this kind of effort. Huntington's assertions. Regarding Huntington's claims about the clash of civilizations, I think that rather than being realistic evaluations regarding the future, these types of claims seem to me to be determining new goals in an attempt to influence public opinion within the framework of these goals. Until the disintegration of the Soviet bloc, there was the idea of a clash between the East and West, or between NATO and the Warsaw Pact countries. This time, by creating new enemy fronts, a clash between civilizations based on religious and cultural differences is being prepared, and a new foundation is being laid for the continuation of the rule of the power blocs. Actually, up until now, conflict is something that is desired by certain power centers. The masses have been put on alarm against a frequently conjectured and feared enemy. This enemy is more imaginary than real. It is in this manner that the masses have been prepared for every kind of war. In truth, no divine religion has ever been based on conflict, whether it be the religions represented by Moses and Jesus, or the religion represented by Muhammad. Upon them be peace. On the contrary, these religions, especially Islam, are strictly against disorder, treachery, conflict, and oppression. Islam means peace, security, and well-being. Thus, in a religion based on peace, security, and world harmony, war and conflict are negative aspects. In exceptional cases, there is a right to self-defense, just like when the body tries to rid itself of germs that have attacked it, but this can be done only according to certain principles. Islam has always breathed peace and goodness. Islam considers war as a secondary event. Rules have been placed in order to balance and limit it. For example, Islam takes justice and world peace as a basis. Let not the hatred of others to you make you swerve to wrong and depart from justice. Al-Ma'idah 5:8. Islam developed a line of defense based on certain principles in order to protect the freedom of belief, life, property, the mind, and one's descendants, as has the modern legal system. Christianity, as a religion of abstract love, from the very beginning categorically condemned war and did not lay down any rules regarding this human and historical reality. But it was not able to prevent wars like the World Wars or the 100 Years' Wars or the Nagasaki and Hiroshima incidents from occurring. The views of Huntington and others like him of the future are unfortunately based on conflict and reflect plans to continue domination through conflicts. With the blessings and beneficence of God, we are going to do our best to help this breeze of tolerance and dialogue to continue blowing. It is a breeze that has only recently begun to blow, and it shows a tendency towards spreading over the entire world. God willing, we will prove the predictions of such scholars to be false. We believe that these breezes are powerful enough to overwhelm lethal weapons, to subdue mechanized military units, and much of any other negativity that may arise. The fact that every segment of society is expressing and enacting this brand new message, the roots of which lie in the past, in the message of the prophets, is a divine favor to today's devotees of love. In this respect, we state that tolerance and dialogue should be represented in our country in the best possible way and should be an example to the whole world. Such an example will encourage people to come together, to gather round the same basic human values, and, God willing, humankind will live one more spring before seeing the end of the world. I trust in the beauty found in the makeup of humanity. Your most respected Holiness, we bring you the sincerest greetings from the people of the land known to be the birthplace of the three great religions, people who have full knowledge of your sacred mission to make the world a better place in which to live. We also thank you from the bottom of our hearts for granting us an audience and for taking time from your most hectic schedule. We are here to be a Muslim party to the continuing mission of the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue, PCID, instituted by His Holiness Pope Paul VI. We would like to see this mission reach fruition. We come to you most humbly, yet with some audacity, to offer our modest assistance in accomplishing this most worthy task. Islam has been a misunderstood religion, and for this the Muslims are mostly to blame. A timely effort in an appropriate venue can help to greatly reduce this misunderstanding. The Muslim world would welcome the opportunity for a dialogue that would work toward eradicating centuries-old misconceptions about Islam. Humankind, from time to time, has denied religion in the name of science and denied science in the name of religion, arguing that the two present conflicting views. All knowledge belongs to God, and religion is from God. How could the two then be in conflict? To this end, our joint efforts directed toward interreligious dialogue to improve understanding and tolerance among people can go a long way. We have, in our country, been in dialogue with the leaders of several Christian denominations for some time now. We humbly claim that these modest efforts have not been in vain. Our goal is to establish fraternity among the faithful of the three great religions through tolerance and understanding. We can, by coming together, stand up against those misguided souls and skeptics to act as breakers, barriers, if you will, against those who wish to see the so-called clash of civilizations become a reality. Last year we held a symposium on peace and tolerance between civilizations, attended by international scholars of some renown. Encouraged by the unqualified success of this effort, we would like to try to repeat the event. We are currently in the process of organizing a conference on interreligious dialogue directed towards strengthening the bond among the adherents of the three great religions, an event at which we hope the Vatican will be present. We will be pleased and greatly honored if you would be kind enough to accept the invitation extended to you by Mr. Demirel to visit our country, so that Your Holiness can see the holy places in Turkey. The people of Anatolia await with great eagerness the possibility to demonstrate their hospitality and to warmly welcome you. After discussing the matter with the Palestinian leaders, we are able to secure an invitation to jointly visit Jerusalem, a visit that may prove to be a significant step toward efforts to proclaim that sacred city an international zone, a place where Christians, Jews, and Muslims alike would be free to go on pilgrimage with no restrictions, without even needing a visa. We also would like to propose the establishment of a conference series to be held in different world capitals on a rotational basis, the initial one being held in Washington, D.C., with the collaboration of the leaders of the three great faiths. The timing for the second series might be ideal for the occasion of the 2000th anniversary of the birth of Christ. A student exchange program would also be most beneficial. Having young people of faith study together will enhance their affinity for each other. Within the framework of a student exchange program, a College of Divinity could be established in Haran, in the Urfa province, known as the birthplace of Prophet Abraham, who is professed to be the father of the three great religions. This could be accomplished by expanding the programs at Haran University or in setting up an independent university with a comprehensive curriculum that would satisfy the needs of all three faiths. The latter may prove problematical owing to the obstacles due to state policies. The suggested programs may sound overambitious, but they are well within reach. There are two types of people in the world, conformist and nonconformist. Conformists try to adapt themselves to whatever takes place in society. Nonconformists, on the other hand, try to adopt the society to perennial values and to favorable new developments. Therefore, all the progress in society is due to nonconformist people. Thank God for nonconformist people. M. Fethullah Gulen, God's humble servant. Message concerning the September 11th terrorist attacks. I would like to make it very clear that any terrorist activity, no matter by whom it is carried out or for what purpose, is the greatest blow to peace, democracy, and humanity. For this reason, no one, and certainly no Muslim, can approve of any terrorist activity. Terror has no place in a quest to achieve independence or salvation. It takes the lives of innocent people. Even though at first sight such acts seem to harm the target, all terrorist activities eventually do more harm to the terrorists and their supporters. This latest terrorist activity, which is a most bloody and condemnable one, is far more than an attack on the United States of America. It is an assault against world peace as well as against universal democratic and humanistic values. Those who perpetrated this atrocity can only be considered as being the most brutal people in the world. Please let me reassure you that Islam does not approve of terrorism in any form. Terrorism cannot be used to achieve any Islamic goal. No terrorist can be a Muslim, and no real Muslim can be a terrorist. Islam demands peace, and the Quran demands that every real Muslim be a symbol of peace and work to support the maintenance of basic human rights. If a ship is carrying 9 criminals and 1 innocent person, Islam does not allow for the ship to be sunk in order to punish the 9 criminals. Doing so would violate the rights of the 1 innocent person. Islam respects all individual rights and states clearly that none of these can be violated, even if doing so would be in the interest of the community. The Quran declares that one who takes a life unjustly has in effect taken all the lives of humanity, and that one who saves a life has in effect saved all the lives of humanity. Moreover, Prophet Muhammad stated that a Muslim is a person who does no harm either with the hands or with the tongue. I strongly condemn this latest terrorist attack on the United States. It only deserves condemnation and contempt, and it must be condemned by every person in the world. I appeal to everyone for calmness and restraint. Before America's leaders and people respond to this heinous assault out of their justified anger and pain, please let me express that they must understand why such a terrible event occurred, and let us look at how similar tragedies can be avoided in the future. They must also be aware of the fact that injuring innocent masses in order to punish a few guilty people is to no one's benefit. Rather, such actions will only strengthen the terrorists by feeding any existing resentment and by giving birth to more terrorists and more violence. Please remember that terrorists represent an extremely small minority within any society or religion. Let us try to understand each other better, for only through mutual understanding and respect can such violence be prevented in the future. I feel the pain of the American people from the bottom of my heart, and I assure them that I pray to God Almighty for the victims, and I pray that He give their loved ones and all other Americans the necessary patience to endure their pain. I would like to take this opportunity to once again send my regards